If I went back 13 years or so and started all over again with learning guitar, there are a few things I would do differently. Welcome to Ethan's Guitar Room, not to string you along, but a few things before we get into the topic. If you haven't yet, please consider subscribing. It would help me out. This channel is still pretty new and growing. And since my last video, we reached 1,000 subscribers. So thank you to everyone who has subscribed. In case you didn't know, that's a big milestone where you can start making some ad revenue on YouTube, which might make all of this worth it someday. If you haven't yet, subscribe to help me reach my goal of 3,000 by the end of the year. And let's get into it. If I started over, there are a few things I would do differently that would help me get to where I'm at right now a lot sooner. And if you're a seasoned player, leave any tips you might have for the beginners in the comments. When I started playing, I only had an acoustic guitar. And I actually think that's a really good way for anybody to start. There are so many distractions with an electric guitar. You got amps, pedals, cables. If you get a starter kit, the cable that comes with it is probably going to go out, and that's not going to be helpful to your learning. If all you have is an electric guitar, that's fine. You could even play it without plugging it in, so then none of those things matter. And I never had a guitar teacher, so I kind of just found stuff online and learned as I went. The first thing I learned was the open chords. And that's where I would start again with a caveat. Learning the open chords is a great way to start building the coordination and hand strength that you'll need to play anything on guitar. And with just a few chords, you can learn to play a bunch of different songs that you already like. All you'll need is your guitar and maybe a capo if it's not in an open chord friendly key. And that's what makes guitar fun. So I think that's just as important as all the technical stuff. But don't ignore the technical stuff. That's the first thing I would do differently. So learn the open chords, but also learn the notes that make up that chord. For example, you have a G chord. And basically how I learned was 3rd fret, 2nd fret, open string, 3rd fret, 3rd fret. And that's not really helpful beyond just playing that chord. So instead, as you pick through the chord, learn the notes. So for a G chord, G, B, D, G, D, G. And you can do that with every chord. And that will take some time, so if you just work on it for a few minutes every time you practice, you'll start remembering all of that soon enough. The second thing I would learn is the pentatonic scale in all 5 positions. At first, you'll just be memorizing the shapes across the fretboard and how to move it between the keys, but you'll get the hang of it pretty quick, and that is the foundation of a ton of guitar solos that I know you've heard. And I'll continue with the pentatonic scale right after this ad. This video is sponsored by you, the viewer, and especially you if you're a subscriber. As I mentioned earlier, I just reached 1,000 subscribers and I have a goal of reaching 3,000 by the end of the year. So if you haven't yet done so, please subscribe. Give this video a thumbs up. That helps it get seen a little bit more, which helps me continue to make these videos. You can also follow me on Patreon for free. That's a better platform for sending messages back and forth, and I would like to get some input on what my upcoming videos are, and that's a good place to do it. So you can follow me for free and give me your input, or if you'd like to support the channel further, you can subscribe to one of the paying tiers. After you learn the pentatonic shapes, learn where to find the root note of the key you're in within those shapes. So if you're playing in the key of G, find everywhere that there's a G note up and down the fretboard within that scale. And if you learn those positions, as you move those shapes for different keys, that will always be a root note. And this changes if you're playing major versus minor, but to keep things simple, I'm just talking about G major, and I'll put a picture up here so you can see what the pentatonic scale looks like across the fretboard, highlighting where all of those G notes are. If none of this makes sense to you and you would like a more in-depth lesson, just let me know in the comments and I'll try to work that in. And one last thing that I would learn sooner, if I could do it all over again, is triads. And a triad is just a chord made up of 3 notes. So earlier we talked about the G major chord, and there were only 3 notes that make up that chord: G, B, and D. So G triads, an easy place to start is with your open strings. You have a D string, a G string, and a B string, and they're all right next to each other. So that's a triad, and you could play only those 3 strings, and that's a G chord. And the chord you play on those 3 open strings is also what's known as an inversion. An inversion just means you took the notes of that chord and played them in a different order. So with the big full G chord, you have G, B, and D on the top 3 strings, But on that triad, you would have D, G, and B. So it's a different order. And that's an easy way to mix up your chords, and it kind of accents the notes in a different way. So let's stay on those 3 strings, and we'll move up the neck to find other combinations of those 3 notes. And if you know your open chords, some of these shapes will start to look familiar. So if you've ever heard of the caged system, that's what this is. You take the open chords C, A, G, E, and D, which spells caged. And the concept behind the caged system is you take those chord shapes and you move them up and down the neck to get the chord that you want. Again, if you want to deep dive on that, let me know in the comments. So the triads that I'm playing the whole way up the neck are all derived from those caged shapes. Once you've learned those triad shapes across those 3 strings, pick a different set of 3 strings and do it the same way. Once you learn these 3 things, you'll start to feel way more comfortable moving around the fretboard. You'll start to see where these triads fit within the different positions of the pentatonic scale. And those root notes within the pentatonic scale give you a starting point to build those triads. And the great thing about this is all of these shapes are movable, which makes it very easy to switch from one key to another. That's all I have for you today. I hope that was helpful. Like I said earlier, if you're a seasoned player, add some more tips in the comments. And if you're a beginner, let me know if you want me to do a little more in-depth on any of these things. But most importantly, keep playing, have fun with it, and you'll start to figure it out. Make sure you've subscribed, give this thing a thumbs up, and go check out one of my other videos.